Morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Okay, you're thrust into the limelight as a 17-year-old on Britain's Got Talent. How old do you think you were when you realised you had that voice?
In 2012, the world was introduced to a 17-year-old boy whose voice would stop millions in their tracks. Jonathan Antoine, shy, soft-spoken, and visibly nervous, stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage. But when he opened his mouth to sing, what came out was not the voice of a timid teenager. It was something extraordinary, a voice so powerful, so full of raw emotion, that the world would remember his name overnight. Yet behind that breathtaking performance was a life shaped by pain, bullying, and a relentless struggle to find self. This wasn't just a story of talent. It was the journey of a boy who endured the darkest corners of self-doubt, only to rise as one of the most captivating classical voices of his generation. Jonathan's journey into music was never just about fame or applause, it was survival. From a young age, he was subjected to cruel and constant bullying. Teased for his size, his shyness, and his appearance, he became a target in school hallways. The emotional scars ran deep. By the time he was 4, he had already begun to use food as a coping mechanism. It wasn't long before his weight became another weapon used against him by his peers, and the more they ridiculed him, the more he withdrew into himself. Music became his only refuge. Singing was the one place where he felt safe, where the world's judgment faded away, if only for a few minutes. At just 6 years old, Jonathan displayed signs of musical genius. He had perfect pitch, a rare ability that allowed him to identify any note just by hearing it. It was a gift most could only dream of, but even that wasn't enough to shield him from the emotional weight he carried. By the time he was 8, he was struggling with depression. And at 10, he had ballooned to over 150 pounds. His mother, Julie, desperate to help her son, did everything she could. She mortgaged their home twice just to afford therapy. But despite all efforts, Jonathan continued to spiral. He had been diagnosed with trauma-induced hyperphagia, a rare condition where emotional trauma triggers uncontrollable eating. Every bite of food became a momentary escape, and every moment away from music felt like drowning. But in the midst of the struggle, a turning point emerged. During a school choir audition, Jonathan was reluctantly pulled from the back row to sing solo. What followed was nothing short of astonishing. His voice, rich, operatic, and heartbreakingly beautiful. His teachers, for the first time, he wasn't mocked, he was marveled at. That moment set in motion a new chapter. He began formal training and was accepted into the Royal Academy of Music's junior program. There, his talent blossomed. He performed solos in the magic flute, becoming the youngest to ever take on the role. He immersed himself in classical music, spending weekends refining his technique, studying music theory, and finding power in his voice that he never knew he had. In high school, a pivotal relationship formed when he was paired with fellow student Charlotte. Their voices, his powerful tenor and her crisp soprano, blended beautifully. Their chemistry was undeniable, both musically and personally. Charlotte's confidence balanced Jonathan's anxiety, and she often pulled him out of panic attacks. Backstage, together, they began performing at local events, churches, and even small talent competitions. It was Charlotte who urged Jonathan to audition for Britain's Got Talent. He was terrified. Years of ridicule had made him fear public judgment. But just 13 minutes before the deadline, Charlotte submitted the audition form. When the day of the audition arrived, producers showed interest mostly in Charlotte. She refused to perform unless Jonathan could join her. They agreed. As the two walked on stage, Jonathan stood quietly, his eyes low, visibly anxious. Before they even sang, Simon Cowell whispered a dismissive comment, clearly judging Jonathan's appearance, but then they began to sing the prayer. Within seconds, the atmosphere shifted. The audience rose to their feet in awe, and the judges' jaws dropped. Simon, stunned, compared Jonathan to a young Pavarotti. That moment became one of the most watched auditions in television history. Millions of people across the world discovered a voice unlike anything they had heard before, though they didn't win the competition. Finishing second to a dancing dog act named Pudsey, the duo became overnight sensations. Simon Cowell signed them to a multi-million-pound record deal. Their debut album together soared up the UK charts. A second album followed, perhaps love but creative differences slowly emerged. Jonathan was drawn toward the purity of classical opera, while Charlotte leaned toward musical theater. In 2014, the duo amicably split. While Charlotte pursued theater, Jonathan was offered a solo contract, something almost unheard of for classical artists at such a young age. Still, he hesitated. Without Charlotte, his emotional safety net was gone. But he took a leap of faith. Later that year, Jonathan released his debut solo album, Tenor. It debuted at #1 on the UK classical charts, making him the youngest tenor in history to do so. Critics and fans alike praised his ability to blend youthful vulnerability with mature vocal mastery. From there, he continued to grow stages with legends like Placido Domingo and performing with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. In 2020, he released Going the Distance, a deeply personal concept album. And in 2024, he collaborated with Grammy-winning songwriter Diane Warren on By Request, bridging the worlds of classical and contemporary music. But while his career was soaring, Jonathan was quietly unraveling. Fame brought pressure, and the demands of public life often overwhelmed him. He became increasingly reclusive, skipping interviews, turning down press events, and struggling with his mental health. Then, in late 2022, everything changed. After years of uncertainty, Jonathan was diagnosed with autism. For him, the diagnosis was both a shock and a relief. Suddenly, his lifelong challenges, his extreme sensitivity, his struggles with change, his panic attacks, and his emotional exhaustion made sense. In 2023, during an emotional interview in Australia, he publicly shared his diagnosis for the first time. It was a brave step towards self-acceptance. The news resonated deeply with fans, especially those in the neurodivergent community. Jonathan's story wasn't just about overcoming bullying or weight issues. It was about understanding yourself in a world that often misunderstands you. On World Autism Awareness Day, he shared a heartfelt message, calling the diagnosis a scary but freeing gift. He explained that it didn't change who he was, but it helped him finally see why he felt the way he did. That revelation became a new turning point. Jonathan started advocating for mental health, speaking out about autism awareness, and encouraging others to embrace their true selves unapologetically. His personal transformation was equally remarkable. After years of struggling with his weight, he lost over 70 pounds. He began managing a long-undetected thyroid condition and adopted healthier habits, including daily walks to clear his mind. And through it all, love kept him grounded. He found support in his partner, Canadian waitress Michelle Ducey. They met through a web chat and maintained a long-distance relationship that blossomed into something beautiful. Michelle stood by him through his darkest moments, encouraging his growth and inspiring new music. Their bond became a quiet foundation behind his public success. Today, Jonathan Antoine is not just an artist. He's a symbol of resilience, a voice that rose from the shadows of bullying, mental illness, and self-doubt to light up concert halls around the world. His story reminds us that beauty can be born from pain, that genius can come wrapped in anxiety, and that sometimes, the most extraordinary voices come from the most unexpected places. And though his journey is far from over, Jonathan continues to inspire, proof that the most powerful music often comes from a place of deep, personal truth.